Another pivotal state in the 2024 presidential race, with Arizona's Supreme Court allowing a near total abortion ban in the state to kick in within a few weeks. And after several failed attempts, on Friday, the House of Representatives reauthorized a controversial spying law, despite ongoing division within the Republican Party over the program. This morning, we want to hear about your top news story of the week. Our phone line for Republicans is 202-748-8001. For Democrats, 202-748-8000.
All right, top news
Independents
story of the
can
week.
call
We're
in
going
at
to use an open
202-748-8002. And you can text us, 202-748-8003. But please be sure to include your name and where you're writing in from. If you'd like to reach us on social media, we're at facebook.com/C-SPAN and on X at C-SPAN WJ. Some of the other top news stories that we've been following this week here on C-SPAN include, yes, that abortion story, as well as the reaction on the campaign trail to the news out of Arizona, with former President Trump issuing his stance in various ways on abortion. We also heard about Speaker Johnson being under fire by Marjorie Taylor Greene, especially in relation to the FISA law, that controversial spying program, and he met with President Trump this week. The March inflation report came in higher than expected, and also President Biden announced another round in his student loan forgiveness plans. And of course, many of us enjoyed watching the 2024 solar eclipse. But some other news that we are watching this morning out of the Middle East follows news this week that Iran, according to U.S. officials, has plans to strike sites in Israel. Here's a story about that in the New York Times. American intelligence analysts and officials said on Friday that they expected Iran to strike multiple targets inside Israel within the next few days in retaliation for an Israeli bombing in the Syrian capital on April 1st that killed several Iranian commanders, senior Iranian commanders. The United States, Israel's preeminent ally, has military forces in several places across the Middle East, but Iran is not expected to target them in order to avoid direct conflict with the United States. Any Iranian strike inside Israel would be a watershed moment in the decades of hostilities between the two nations that would most likely open a volatile new chapter in the region. President Biden gave his assessment of that potential attack on Israel from Tehran. Here he is responding to reporters' questions about it.
How imminent do you think an attack on Israel is from Iran, Mr. President?
I want to get this secure information, but my expectation sooner than later.
Mr. President, what is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
Are American personnel at risk, Mr. President? Mr. President, are American troops at risk as well?
We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel. We will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed. Thank you very much.
Now to your calls on your top news story of the week. We'll start with Tom in Cream Ridge, New Jersey, on our line for Republicans. Good morning, Tom.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Listen, I hope everyone out there, take a good listen to what I have to say. First of all, we're worrying about Iran attacking Israel. Well, Iran was loaded up from the Democratic Party. Obama gave Iran all of our drone missile technology. He landed our top drone in Iran because he felt that it was fair for them to have a lead in a military division of the world now. Not only did he give us the drone technology, Biden gave them billions of dollars on the 4th of July at midnight.
Cash.
So everyone get on Google and look up all the money Obama gave to Iran to build up the drones that he gave to you got Russia and China came to Iran and dissected the military drones from America that landed in Iran because Obama said land it there. He should have crashed it into the sea. It's a stupid thing he did, and he did it on purpose. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Paul in Houston, Texas, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Paul.
Yes, I'd like to respond to what this gentleman just said. Obama didn't give Iran nothing. That was Iran's money. He didn't give Iran anything. And getting off of that subject, on to this immigration issue. Biden gonna end up losing the election behind this border. You know, everybody want to see immigrants come over, but they want to see them come over in a legal way. And Biden gonna hand Trump the election, and we're gonna have
Biden. That's correct.
tool for a president.
Paul, what do you think Biden should do about the border?
I think he should stop close it off, and let people enter this country the legal way.
Okay.
Still vote
Thank
for
you,
a
Paul.
Democrat.
Barney is in Zephyr Hills, Florida, on our line for Republicans. Good morning, Barney.
Yes, I want to talk about the Supreme Court that Trump put up there. When them guys were sworn in, they swore in on the Bible, and they thought that they lied on the Bible, but they wouldn't overturn Roe versus Wade. That is ridiculous. We got a lying Supreme Court, and now you got your buddy Trump and the Speaker of the House talking about voter fraud before the election even starts. So you know what this going to come out to be? Another insurrection. More people storming in the Capitol again, following this man that should be in prison.
All right,
And
that's a
you're
fake
Republican,
Nope.
What's wrong with that?
Just...
Right is right, wrong is wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Barney. John is in Brooklyn, New York, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, John.
How you doing? I want to talk about abortion.
John, here we go.
Clergy, and I'm amazed at all the religious establishment that knows the Bible, that their ministers and all clergies don't tell the world that Jesus give you a choice to make your choice, what right or wrong. If a lady want to have abortion, that's between her and her God.
Wow.
Jesus said, when I come,
some pastor,
I would divide the wheat from the tares. So this thing about abortion is no more sin than telling a lie or committing adultery, because God sees no big sin and no little sin. What's wrong with the churches, these clergy, these preachers, these rebels and bishops? Why don't they stand up and tell America and the world, God give you a choice? And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to hang up with the border. I don't know why Biden don't do an executive order, but he don't do it. But Trump said don't pass his bill. He want to run on it. But it's just a mess.
Reflexive Democrats.
And as far as let me put another one. Biden's infrastructure program. Why the Democrats don't explain why sitting there? What would it do? The income it would bring in, how it would bring America new bridges, new technology, and they won't talk about his infrastructure program. Can you imagine? If they don't talk about Trump, the Democrats, they talk about the infrastructure. Can you imagine what Trump would get up and how he would feel in the morning time if nobody mentioned his name? He couldn't take it, I don't believe.
Thank you, John. Next up, we have Dwayne in North Charleston on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Dwayne.
All right. 2 Democrats in a row.
I just feel the top story of the week. It's all about who's in the news and his problems and issues that he has with his cases. And I just think we just need to be carefully watch and see what they do in terms of how he's...
It's a little hard to hear you, Dwayne. Can you speak a little more directly into your phone?
Sure.
You hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes, much better.
Well,
thank you.
It's what it is. He has to. We have to keep our eye on what's going on with this case, with the case in New York. I just think that
you're talking about former President Trump's hush money trial.
Correct. Yes, and that's going to be something to watch to see the actual truth, so we can move on from this nonsense that's been going on since Joe Biden got in. And it's amazing how he disrespected him and still hasn't conceded. And that's really what my concern is about a person in general that doesn't want to admit he lost and move on. So we just have to keep an eye on what's going on. And hopefully in November, we'll have a new day.
All right, thanks so much, Dwayne. I
Oh,
want to
we
give
will,
our
my friend.
audience a bit more
We
information
will.
about that
Good or
hush money
bad, it's
trial.
gonna be a new day.
Some news this week on that, with jury selection set to start in that trial on Monday. This week, Trump said that he intends to testify in his Manhattan criminal case. Here's a story about it in the New York Times. Jury selection begins Monday in the prosecution of Donald Trump on charges of covering up a sex scandal. He said he would try to sway jurors personally, though he has backed away in the past. Donald Trump, having failed to fend off a criminal trial in Manhattan that begins on Monday, said that he planned to testify in a case stemming from a hush money payment to a porn star. Taking questions Friday from reporters at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, Mr. Trump, when asked whether he would take the stand, responded that he would. "I'm testifying. I tell the truth," he said, standing just off a sunny patio of the private club with Speaker Mike Johnson behind him. "I mean, all I can do is tell the truth, and the truth is that there's no case. They have no case." Marshall is in Nashville, Tennessee, on our line for Republicans. Good morning, Marshall.
Good morning, and good morning, America. Kimberly, I'd ask if you give me just a little bit of space, if possible.
Go for it.
I want to talk about what's going on in America, and it's multifaceted, but I'll keep it condensed as much as possible. This past week, Iran said they were going to retaliate against Israel. You have a president and a press secretary who is refusing to tell the press what preparations America's taking. Meanwhile, in Dearborn, Michigan, you have an imam and a group of people who are singing "Death to America" repeatedly. You have people protesting in the street in the name of Palestinians, but those Palestinians are the ones who are shields for Hamas. And I'm not saying that's by choice. Although they elected Hamas over them, they didn't elect to be held as human shields. And I want to kind of wrap that around democracy. Your first caller said, check it out on Google. By now, Google has those stats hidden. The next caller stated that he was concerned about immigration and that Biden's going to lose the election. My thought is Biden's not going to lose the election because of the 10 million people that he's allowed into this country, and not only that, but brought in.
Okay, thank you, Marshall. Next up, we have JJ in Hollister, California, on our line for Independence. Good morning, JJ.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Thanks for having me on.
Yes, we can hear you. What's your top news story?
I got a couple of them. First of all, I'm concerned about Biden's student loan. That he tells everybody, oh, forget the student loan. I'm going to take care of it. But when it comes down to the bottom gritty, he's not taking care of it. The taxpayer is going to pay for it. Second thing I'm concerned about is get Trump, get Trump. You got Fannie Mae over there that was says that money that was supposed to go for Trump conviction and she spent on her boyfriend. Now Jim Jordan of Congress says that Fannie Mae had received grant money and she can't produce receipts or evidence that shows where the money went. Then number three, we got Mayorkas says that the border is closed and everybody says it's under control, the Democrats, and then you find out that how could that be when 13 million people's reasons why the border's not closed? Then you got Biden and Obama that Ukraine was asking for help and they sent blankets. When Trump was in office, he sent them tanks. And finally,
javelins.
Biden takes a physical, but won't take a cognitive test. Come on, they should give us a cut. He gets up on the microphone, can't finish a sentence. He says, can't find his way off the stage, and the monitor is doing all the talking.
So, JJ, I want to follow up on one of the first news stories you mentioned, which is about the student loan forgiveness. Here's a story about that in Axios, that Biden's new student loan relief plan would slash debt for millions. That came out on April the 8th. The Biden administration on Monday announced a new sweeping student loan forgiveness plan that would provide relief for more than 30 million borrowers. The plan is Biden's latest attempt to cancel student debt after the Supreme Court blocked his signature student debt cancellation plan last year. Since then, the administration has found ways to deliver relief to millions of borrowers by using its existing authority and circumventing the need for congressional or court approval. Under the new plan, the administration would cancel up to $20,000 of a borrower's accrued interest, regardless of income, the White House said in a statement on Monday. President Biden touted that new plan at an event in Madison, Wisconsin on Monday, and responded to criticism that it leaves out other Americans who did not attend college.
This relief can be life-changing, just as you heard from Ashley. Folks, I will never stop to deliver student debt relief on hardworking Americans, and it's only in the interest of America that we do it. And again, it's for the good of our economy. It's growing stronger and stronger, and it is. By freeing millions of Americans from this crushing debt of student debt, it means they can finally get on with their lives instead of their lives being put on hold. That's why every American making a student loan payment should go to studentaid.gov, studentaid.gov, to learn more about these plans and see if you're and them fit for you. Look, that's not all. People say to me, it's great you're helping people into college. How about all those hardworking people who grew up and had no opportunity to go to college? I get it. That's the neighborhood I come from. That's why a big part of my economic agenda is investing in all Americans, whether you attend college or not. We're expanding career and technical education at high schools. Think how many of these shop programs have been dropped. People not knowing whether they want to work with their hands. Think not being able to get started. To provide pathways to good middle-class jobs without college.
Never made anything.
My Labor Department is investing $200 million in grants for registered apprenticeship programs around the country.
Oh yeah, throw money everywhere.
So folks can learn a skilled trade.
Once again, we're looking for your top news story of the week, and you can call in. Our numbers are on the screen now. One message we did get via text is from Stephen in Gladstone, Michigan. My top story is no matter how many times Donald Trump tried to delay his criminal trial, it starts Monday, and there's nothing Trump can do to stop it. Trump is frantic. And that's once again the hush money trial in Manhattan. Kelvin is in Joppa, Maryland, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Kelvin.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for taking my call, and thank you for what you do for the country. April the 10th, USA Today, new voting restrictions taking hold in the South. There's a quote from Michael McClann in Louisiana State Conference of the NAACP, and he said, quote, "We have to, at some point in time, use the same process that is being used to kick us out of the voting, to make a stronger push to make sure that everyone has the unfettered right to vote." And the reason why this is important to me, and it should be to the rest of Americans, is the H.R. 1 John Lewis voting rights. That act has to be passed. If not, it will hurt our country. And
this guy doesn't even know what the.
And the last thing I would like to share is that you do your very best to fact check some of the people, but it's hard to fact check everybody with the time constraints that you have. But I do thank you for your service. Have a blessed day.
You too. Thank you, Kelvin. Kelvin was referencing a story in USA Today that came out on April the 6th. I pulled it up here. Voter ID and absentee ballot limits the South tightens key voting laws ahead of the election. States across the South are passing new restrictions on how votes are cast. Civil rights activists say it will reduce turnout among black voters. And
Black
see.
voters are
Scroll
so
down
dumb
here.
they
It
can't
says
get
since
an ID.
2020, states have tightened who
How
can vote
racist.
absentee and who can turn in absentee ballots.
low
They've passed or stiffened voter
expectation, the
identification
soft
laws,
bigotry
and under
of
pressure
low
from Republicans who
expectations.
falsely claim the 2020 election was stolen through fraud, they're adjusting how they remove voters from the rolls. That could affect which presidential candidate wins the swing states of Georgia and North Carolina, the outcome of key congressional and state legislative races, and which party's candidate wins a seat on the Alabama court that upended fertility medicine. Next up, we have Cindy in North Carolina on our line for Independence. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning.
All right, Cindy,
Thank you for taking my call. I agree with the two gentlemen before the last one. About how things are going in our country under this administration. But my main point that I was calling in about is the division that we have and the hatred. There's so many people that call in with the hatred of Donald Trump. I mean, he is not our president at the moment. He is running for president, but the hatred that spews out. And then the last gentleman about fact-checking, I agree on that. But I think in North Carolina, we don't have to show an ID to vote, but I think you should have to show an ID to vote. I vote.
10 million illegals
that's why
flooded
I'm
the country.
independent, because I can vote either side. And I look at the policies and stuff they have. And another reason I was calling about division in families and the politics. I just lost my older sister.
I'm sorry.
And I am too. I'm my best friend. But how politics has played in our family, it doesn't matter. Family should be first in the love between your family, aunts, uncles, and I see the division even in my own family sometimes. There just should be no hatred. It shouldn't be. And also the media is so bad about telling the truth. They just really are. Our social media, our media on TV, it's hard to find the truth out there sometimes. So I just pray that the country would come together and stop this. Look at the person's character and how they are instead of who they vote for or who they believe.
My condolences to your family, Cindy, and thank you so much for calling in with your thoughts this morning.
But we gotta go.
Next up, we have Adu in Massachusetts on our line for Republicans. Go ahead, Adu.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. What's your top news story?
Good morning, C-SPAN. Thank you, Washington Journal, for taking my call. My top news story of the week is the national debt. Now, it really scares me how high the national debt is and how our congressmen are not coming on the floor and talking about how they're going to save it. My other problem of the week is Mike Johnson. It seems like he's going so far to the left instead of working for the right.
I agree.
My other concern is the election. This is the most scary election I have ever prepared for this year, and I don't like how it's going to turn out.
What worries you about the election?
Well, if Trump doesn't win, I don't want Biden to win knowing his position and his incompetence. And if we don't get this country straightened out to the right direction, we are in a bad position in history. Now, history has
it's over.
Been
if
warning
Biden
us
gets
about
reelected,
what's ahead of us
over.
with the national debt. And if they don't solve this national debt and work on our military, we have a serious problem on our hands. War all around the world, and nothing is getting solved on the floor, in the House, and the Senate. And until they get this Washington in line, we have a serious problem on our hands.
Thank you, Adu. I want to follow up on his point about Mike Johnson related to the Speaker of the House. Here's a story in CBS News that Marjorie Taylor Greene says no deal after meeting with Mike Johnson as she threatens his ouster. a roughly hour-long meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson on Wednesday did little to convince Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene to drop her threat of forcing a vote that could end his speakership. I got a lot of excuses, Greene, a Georgia Republican, told voters after she met with Johnson Wednesday afternoon. Their first conversation since she filed a resolution nearly 3 weeks ago to oust him. We didn't walk out with a deal. Greene threatened to force a vote to strip the Louisiana Republican of the gavel after he relied on Democrats to push through a $1.2 trillion spending bill to avert a partial government shutdown last month. Since then, she's openly criticized his leadership in media interviews and on social media, warning him that passing Ukraine aid or reauthorizing the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act would put his position in peril. Since this article came out, obviously the House has reauthorized FISA. Next up, Robert is in New York on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Robert.
All right, here we go, Robert.
Hi, good morning,
New York.
and thank you for taking my call. I guess my biggest news story is Mike Johnson traveling to Mar-a-Lago to meet with our shadow president, who continues to lie and cheat his way into the Oval Office again. And you know, with respect to some of the prior callers talking about fact-checking, I have a suggestion for C-SPAN as it relates to calls concerning politics. It would be helpful to ask all callers if the 2020 election was stolen, and if where they get their news sources from, because it's quite obvious that Republicans calling in are just mouthing everything that they hear the prior week on far-right news outlets. So it would be very informative for all viewers to know the source of the information that they purport to know and hold dear. So I'll leave it there.
Ask him where he gets his information.
Thank you, Robert. A bit more news on Mike Johnson and that meeting that we were just hearing about. Here's a story in the Associated Press. Trump gives support to embattled Speaker Mike Johnson at pivotal Mar-a-Lago meet. Donald Trump offered a political lifeline Friday to House Speaker Mike Johnson, saying the beleaguered GOP leader is doing, quote, a very good job and tamping down the far-right forces led by Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, trying to oust him from office. Trump and Johnson appeared side by side at the ex-president's Mar-a-Lago Club, a rite of passage for the new House House leader, as he hitches himself and his GOP majority to the indicted Republican Party leader ahead of the November election. Next up, we have Daryl in Delaware on our line for Independence. Good morning, Daryl.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. How are you? What's your top news story?
My top news story is one that kind of went under the radar. It just seemed to pop up in the last couple of days. It's the story of Asa Blanton, the Indiana State University nursing student who made a comment in relation to Beyonce's Cowboy Carter album, stating, if you're black, you can't be country. I find that quite interesting and very telling of a segment and kind of an individual saying the quiet part out loud, that there is this underlying current of racism, and the fact that this individual is applying to be in the nursing field, in the healthcare field, who will ultimately be come into contact, I'm sure, in impoverished areas where people of color are. This just speaks to
people of color,
kind of a disparity, and I really, really hope that this issue is addressed. I also want to speak to the fact that the Indiana State University gave a very, very weak response in relation to this news dropping.
Okay, well, thank you. I hadn't heard that story, but I see it covered on ABC 33 News from that area, covering that it was a viral TikTok video saying, if you're black, you're not country, a college student says in a viral TikTok video. A woman who is allegedly a nursing student at Indiana State University is facing backlash after she appeared to criticize Beyonce and black people in a social media video. The video, which has now been deleted, was posted soon after Beyonce dropped her country album Act 2 Cowboy Carter on March 28th. And so now let's go to Tom in Tip City, Ohio, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
What's your top news story?
Here we go.
All this
Tom.
fuss about the border and the Republicans, that's their election issue. They don't want it to go away. They could have did anything they wanted about the border in 2017 when they controlled the presidency, the House, the Senate. Right now, they've got a bill sitting in the House that they don't want to take up because Donald Trump doesn't want the border issue taken care of. And as far as the national deficit, if you'd quit giving away billions of dollars in tax cuts to rich people, that would go a long ways towards helping out the national deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your call. Bob is
Thanks,
in Parrish,
Tom.
Florida.
Get your head
on
out
the
of your
line for
ass this
Republicans.
morning.
Good morning, Bob. What's your top news story?
Good morning. My top news story is disappointment in the Republican Party. And I say that because our family has been conservative Republican for generations, and it's obvious that the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party with integrity of the past. And I would like to see all of the rancor set aside, and that the politicians in Washington would work together, bipartisanship. That's the thing that has to happen in our country. I do not like the way that our party is supporting Donald Trump, because it's obvious that he should not be supported. And I hope that the Donald Trump era will be over sooner rather than later for the good of the country. He is a person who is interested in himself, not in the people, and it's obvious. The trials that are up and coming starting on Monday are obviously things that he has done, and he can say that it's a witch hunt, but it is not a witch hunt. He has done a number of things that has hurt our party, and I can't wait for a return to the Republican Party with integrity, because it doesn't have it now. Thank you.
So, Bob, what does this mean you'll plan to do when it comes to the November election?
Well, I cannot vote for Donald Trump. There is no way. I wish people would just look at the man and see that he is a con artist.
So does that mean you would vote for Biden or stay home? What are your plans?
Well, Biden is working hard to make the United States remain the leader in the world that it has traditionally been. And I hope in this instance that he wins. We only have two choices. And he has worked to lower the deficit. The deficit is on the shoulders of Donald Trump and George W. Bush and presidents who have given tax breaks to the rich at the expense of our national debt.
Why do we have to soak the rich to fund the government?
It just can't continue. So we must vote for sanity. We must vote for someone who will be a leader in the world and not perhaps cause the disintegration of NATO to an extent, and who is obviously in a position to help himself and not look after the people. He can talk about all right, people
moving
he
on.
Loves and cares about, but he really does not care a great deal about the people of the country.
Well, thank
and
you,
please
Bob.
don't get me started on abortion. That is
Okay. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate your call. We have a comment here from our text message line from Bird, who says the House voting for the warrantless FISA authorization ranks first here. The all-out assault on our Constitution and basic freedoms is now endless. So for a bit more on that FISA vote, I'll go back to the New York Times. The House passes 2-year surveillance law extension without warrant requirement. Speaker Johnson scaled back the measure, which is FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, to 2 years from 5 after Donald Trump had urged Republicans to kill it. An effort to require warrants to search for Americans' messages failed on a tie. In a major turnaround, the House on Friday passed a 2-year reauthorization of an expiring warrantless surveillance law that had stalled this week amid GOP resistance stoked by former President Donald J. Trump. The bill would extend a provision known as Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, that is set to lapse next Friday. It was a remarkable resuscitation of the measure from a collapse just days ago on the House floor after Mr. Trump had urged lawmakers to kill FISA. But House passage came after lawmakers only narrowly defeated a bipartisan effort to restrict searches of Americans' messages swept up by the program, a major change that national security officials had warned would gut the law. The vote reflected widespread skepticism of the program. Now, here's a portion of Congressman Jim Jordan's remarks on the House floor yesterday, explaining why he supported the proposal to add that warrant requirement to the law.
In 2021, 2022, the FBI did over 3 million U.S. person queries of this giant 702 database, of this giant haystack of information. 3 million queries of United States persons. And make no mistake, query is a fancy name for search. 3 million Americans' data was searched in this database of information. And guess what? The FBI wasn't even following their own rules when they conducted those searches. That's why we need a warrant. 278,000 times. Not Jim Jordan talking about it, not Ranking Member Nadler talking about it. Washington Post reported last May that 278,000 times the FBI found, the Justice Department found, that they didn't even follow their own darn rules when they searched this giant haystack, this giant database of information on Americans. And so what we're saying is, let's do something that the Constitution has had in place for a couple hundred years that has served our nation well and protected American citizens' liberties. Let's make the executive branch go to a separate and equal branch of government, the judicial branch, and get a probable cause warrant to do the search. After all, it's done pretty well for this great country, greatest country ever for a long, long time. Why wouldn't we have that here? And oh, by the way, in a bipartisan fashion, coming out of our committee, 35-2 vote, we said we will even put exceptions in there. If it's an emergency situation, the FBI doesn't have to get a warrant. They can do the search. If it's an emergency situation, they can do it. We put exceptions in there.
On the other side of that argument, Republican Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio was among members of the Intelligence Committee who argued that adding a warrant requirement would weaken the program.
The FBI abuses have been extraordinary in their searching of foreign data. We need to punish them. This underlying bill punishes the FBI. We should not punish Americans. We should not make our nation less safe by giving constitutional protections to Hamas, giving constitutional protections to the Communist Chinese Party.
Fucking rhino.
I've been talking to members on the floor, and they say, hey, this amendment is about protecting Americans' data in the United States. It's not. Americans' data in the United States is already protected by the Constitution. There's nobody on this House floor who would argue that you don't need a warrant to look at Americans' data in the United States. This amendment, and I encourage everyone to pick it up and read it, applies to the data that we collect in spying on Hamas, Hezbollah, the Communist Chinese Party. To give them a warrant, to give them constitutional protections, means that they're open for business. The day after this passes and we go blind, the Communist Chinese Party has a complete pass to recruit in the United States students to spy on our industry and then our universities. Hamas and Hezbollah have a complete pass. We will be blind as they try to recruit people for terrorist attacks in the United States.
Now back to your calls. Edward is in Rochester, New York, on our line for Independence. Good morning, Edward. What's your top news story?
Such bullshit.
You know what? I think it has changed since I heard everybody talk, but I'm going to be brief. I'm African American. and I have to have an ID.
Congratulations.
To buy cigarettes in New York, to buy beer. I'm 65 years old. To go in certain government buildings,
you're a racist.
I have to have an ID. And this notion that black people like me, who's been in this country 60 years or better,
vote Trump, independent guy,
can't afford to get an ID. This is really despicable and demeaning to African Americans. On the other note, there, I keep hearing individuals talking about people need to pay their fair share. That's a poll-tested language. Everybody, all over the world, believe people need to pay their fair share. But when you ask the individual, what is the rate of a fair share? The United States has the highest corporate tax rate in any industrial country in the whole world. This rate makes the United States unable to compete in the global market. And no one talk about Joe Biden. You know, when Joe Biden gave the eulogy of a former Klansman named Senator Byrd, fact check that. He said Byrd was a great person. Joe Biden was against federal busing of
That's on the C-SPAN archives, folks.
There's videotape of Joe Biden says he doesn't want his kids going to racial jungle schools. And in New York, they say voting ends at 9 o'clock. Okay, 9 p.m. That's what they say. Voting ends at 9 p.m. They have voting all week 3 months before November the 5th. But voting ends at 9 o'clock. Okay, this is what the governor signed. This is what the state assembly signed. This is what the state legislature signed. This is the law. It ends at 9 o'clock. Same thing in Atlanta. So when you start allowing people to vote 10, 11, 12 o'clock, to me, that's against the law. And the last thing I want to say is they always want to tie Donald Trump to Putin. Putin cash cow is Nord Stream pipeline. It's a pipeline that goes to Western Europe, to have Western Europe receive natural gas. Who sanctioned that pipeline? Who sanctioned the cash cow? It was Donald Trump. Who released the cash cow? It was Joe Biden. And we always have a double standard in this country. And even on the abortion thing, I'll say this last. On the abortion thing, the woman has a right to choose. Okay, do they ever tell the people that even a right to choose up to the 9th month? That's what the abortion right people says. A woman could choose up to the 9th month. Is that fair? So, you know.
All right, Edward, I think we've got your points there. Let's move on to Bill in Massachusetts on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Bill.
Yeah, good morning.
What's your top news story?
Well, for the gentleman that was just on, I would like to say that abortion, I believe everybody should make their own choices, and no one should tell anyone what to do. Because when it comes to the end of it, everybody brings in God. Well, you know what? God's going to judge you. If you created a sin or made a sin, and you're not going to get to heaven because of that, have a nice universe. Because it does say, judge not, lest you be judged. I ain't judging anybody. The thing I would like to say, though, is since you're like doing all this fact-checking on stuff, and my questions were going to be different, but now that I'm here. Last week, Friday, I believe it was, the commission in Georgia that was made in 2007 or something like that, to look into election fairness and all that stuff, found that tens of thousands of votes in Fannie Willis's district were forged. They were fake. And the commissioner of the voting didn't look into it, didn't do the things he was supposed to do. None of the due diligence was supposed to be done. So, I mean, I don't want to lose any elections to Republicans. But Donald Trump shouldn't be in office, and the vegetable that's got the White House right now shouldn't be there either. So I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks, Bill. Next up, we have Bob in Pennsylvania on our line for Republicans. Good morning, Bob. What's your top news story?
Someone just won.
Good morning. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Thanks for calling in, Bob.
I wanted to speak on abortion. My opinion. I think in most cases it should be discouraged. And in some cases it should be encouraged. And in some cases, it should be enforced. That's all I have to say.
Who do you think should be making those decisions, Bob? Okay. Thank you, Bob, for your call and
Enforced
for being a
abortion
first-time
is not
caller.
gonna go over well.
Next up, we have David in North Carolina on our line for Independence. Good morning, David. What's your top news story?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My top news story for this week would definitely be FBI Director Christopher Wray warning of an imminent terrorist threat against Americans on American soil. I've not heard very much news outlets discussing it. I have heard it on TV on a couple of news channels. I saw it on my phone on a news app that I have on my phone, but no one's talking about it. And but he warned of an imminent threat, something similar to what happened in Moscow. And of course, the border for me is.
So, David, just before you move
on.
on, don't hang up. I just want to give folks a bit more information about that story that you were just referencing. Here it is reported in Reuters, among several other places, that the FBI is concerned about possible coordinated attack in the U.S. after the Russia massacre. This is a story from April 11th. The FBI is concerned about the possibility of an organized attack in the United States, similar to the one that killed scores of people at a Russian concert hall last month, the Bureau's director told a House of Representatives panel on Thursday. As I look back over my career in law enforcement, I would be hard-pressed to think of a time where so many threats to our public safety and national security were so elevated all at once, Christopher Wray told lawmakers at a budget hearing on Thursday. But that is the case as I sit here today. U.S. officials have been worried about the possibility of an attack carried out by an individual or small group inspired by the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. All right, so that was that story that you were referencing there, David. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. And with that, I appreciate. Thank you for that. And I think that that's probably for me the biggest news story, definitely of this week, because when you have the FBI director forewarning of a threat against your country and your people in your country, it seems like we would have be more of alarmed and more reaction. It would be more on
unless
the news,
it's part of the plan,
spread more than what it is. And I hear people, it seems like it's Republican, Democrat. They hate one another so bad. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, where the country itself is suffering from this. I do feel like I was safer 4 years ago from terrorist threat than I am today. So my vote would be for Trump for many reasons, but that would definitely be one of the main reasons.
Well, thanks for your call, David. Next up is Donald in Grand Blanc, Michigan, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Donald. What's your top news story?
My top news story would be Mike Johnson running down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring of Donald Trump.
Yep.
After Marjorie Taylor Greene
MTG,
basically treated him like a little girl. But
what do you mean by that, treated him like a little girl?
Because she basically told him what she was going to do and what he was going to do. And he has no cojones. He's just a terrible speaker. I wish Nancy Pelosi was back. You would get some work done for the American people. But to the border, Republicans are holding up the border issue. So that's just their rally call that they use to get their supporters all ramped up. And to our terrorist threat. Our terrorist threat is an inside job. It's we have more problems with right-wing white nationalist groups that are a threat to this country.
We'll call white supremacy.
These Trump supporters need to wake up and get off the bandwagon. Biden has done a good job, because I remember when Trump left office, we had food lines. We had a destroyed economy that the Republicans destroyed. So, Republicans have short memories.
So stupid.
Okay, thank you for your call, Donald. Bubba is in Memphis, Tennessee, on our line for Republicans. Good morning, Bubba.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, Bubba.
You had a caller to call in a little while ago about a nursing student that said if you're black, you can't be country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember his president said you're not black if you don't vote for him. So he should probably be more worried about Biden than a nursing student. And you had another caller to call in talking about if Trump does win, if Trump loses, that it'll be another, he called it an insurrection. Nobody's been charged for that. But I remember the last election that businesses boarded up their buildings, and
We're going to go ahead and mark it
in case Trump lost.
just because
It was in case he won that it was going to be all kind of trouble going on. And I think that's probably going to happen this next election. Trump's going to be the next president because Biden and Kamala they're doing the worst job ever in the country. And we got to have Trump to get in here and get this stuff straightened out. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your call, Bubba. John is in Chantilly, Virginia, on our line for Independence. Good morning. What's your top news story?
Good morning. My top story today is actually O.J. Simpson. Most of us who are old enough to remember when O.J. found not guilty, this country, they have, outrage because the jury was black. Here that we have a president who have 91 counts for last 4 years and never been 91. Charged, never been convicted, one still fighting for 91. The reason also that I'm saying, the older gentleman who called earlier, the Republicans that we are dealing today are not Republican. They are misinformed, and they really pretend that they're Republican. All they talking about the Constitution and the border, which is they don't even have a respect the Constitution nor the border, because the only time they agree with you if they win. It's like the Republican never win the
same
president.
thing about Democrats,
We have to be very careful. Most of the Americans who fight this freedom that we enjoying for years, we cannot allow Donald Trump, his daughter-in-law running the Republican, will win this election.
Oh, no!
I don't support both parties. I am always follow the debate that what saved me on how can we do better this country. That's how I vote. But the reality is Donald Trump, it's not one of them. He will not take care of this country. I'm telling you, we're immigrants who came here long time, and we know what we have in this country. But people need to wake up. The freedom that you're enjoying, somebody died for it. And you need to understand that.
Thank you, John.
Why
Next
don't
up, we
you
have
understand
Jim in
that,
Parsons,
asshole?
West Virginia, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning.
All right, Jim. Come
What's
on,
your top
give me a
news
bingo
story?
today. Let's go.
As far as top news stories, wow, there's been a bunch of them. Probably that 1874 law that reverted to in Arizona as far as abortion and so forth. But
West Virginia probably works for the government.
There's so many things that happened during the week. But I wanted to respond to some of the callers. Several callers back, a guy called in and he said something about fact-checking, because before that, a couple guys were spouting about all these amazing things that Trump had done and things that he didn't do, and this guy suggested that if you all could somehow ask these people, where they're getting their information from. But let me just address a couple things I could think of, the remarks that people were making. I'm from West Virginia, so I know all about Senator Byrd, and he apologized profusely, in his later years when he's serving as a senator. He came and spoke at my high school when I was in high school.
You could be in a KKK
and he's
and just say,
nice
I'm
gentleman,
sorry.
and he apologized tearfully. He wrote about it in books, how he apologized he grew up, the Democrat Party, the old Democrat Party, they called them Dixiecrats, were the party of the South, and there was a lot of prejudice and discrimination involved in it, and he was pulled into the KKK movement in his younger years. But, as he grew up and got educated and got into politics and government, And as for a matter of fact, people need to look. One caller needs to look in 1964, before the Civil Rights Act, when it was coming about, and the Democrat National Party, they chose.
Robert Byrd voted against it.
Liberal philosophies.
So Jim, can I ask you to bring it back to sort of your focus for this week?
Yeah, because it's
right.
not helping them
Well,
out.
I mean, a big focus is that it feels like every time you see Trump speak, you know, I mean, you all carry his speeches and so forth. He gets up and he spews a bunch of lies. Republicans only listen to Fox News. They lock themselves into echo chambers. How many Republicans realize that Trump signed a treaty with the Taliban in Afghanistan that released 5,000 dangerous Taliban prisoners? You know, he created pandemonium that caused the collapse of the Afghan government. Biden had to deal with it.
All right, Jim, thank you very much for your call. Let's move on to Deborah in Branson, Missouri, on our line for Independence. Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning. I want to say what the last guy said was right on. The border's a problem for us. It's been a problem. And we can fix it right now, or just at least put a Band-Aid on it. But we can't get any participation from the Republicans because they're trying to push Trump's agenda. Trump is not what this country needs. It needs to come back to God. It needs to be people that love their neighbors, help the immigrants, help the kids get to have a family and a house. And that's what we all got to do. And I just want people to understand Donald Trump is not the solution. He is the problem. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling in, Deborah. Emma is in Chicago, Illinois, on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Emma. What's your top news story?
Yeah, good morning. I just want to say Speaker Johnson is Jewish, so what side people think he's going to be on?
Not.
I
That's
don't
all I have to say.
believe that Speaker Johnson
Jewish.
is Jewish. I think he's identifies as Christian, is my understanding.
Yes.
Christian, okay, but he is still Jewish, so that's,
Next up, we have Beer
right.
in
Thanks,
Milwaukee,
Emma.
Wisconsin, on our line for Independence. Good morning, Beer.
Good morning. I would just like to make a statement regarding how our taxes are being used for war, when those taxes should be used as well to pay for the education of our people in the United States who want to make a difference. And equally as important is how the taxes are paid in a manner that should be building America up, not murdering and killing people in war. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Charles in California on our line for Democrats. Good morning, Charles. What's your top news story?
My top news story is about the hush money trial that's coming up this year, next week. I think it's going to be interesting to actually see a president on trial for trying to cover up a story to where they were actually cheating and having an affair with a porn star. I think this is huge. And a couple of other callers earlier, I'd like to address them. Every time right-leaning people have a tendency to call, they always say Trump needs to get in to straighten up this mess. But they never detail what mess we're talking about. If they're talking about the economy, from what I understand, is going great. It's going great for me. All my stocks and investments are doing well. If they're talking about the border, pass the border bill. And another gentleman called that said that abortion done up to the 9th month. No, that is not done. That's called murder. And Republicans have been pushing that for a long time to actually suggest that the baby is taken out the womb and somebody actually kills the baby. That is not done, people. Stop using those QAnon talking points. But more than that,
it's happening.
More than that, I just wanted to detail, even though we don't get along all the time, I'm glad we all live in this great country. I'm not a big Donald Trump supporter. However, I do believe that Biden is doing a great job. I kind of lost my train of thought, but Biden is doing a great job on everything. But thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
Our clapping
and if
seal,
you do
yes,
just a little
Biden.
bit better job when people are talking about, hey, this country is going so bad. Can you ask them for details of where it's going so bad? because I just don't see it. We don't have soup lines and people standing in line for toilet paper, or we only could go to grocery stores during a certain time.
Thank you for the suggestion, Charles. Next up, Ricardo is in New York on our line for Independence. Go ahead, Ricardo.
Hello. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? I'm just calling in just to say, I love your show. Really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you very much for that, Ricardo. I really appreciate your call. So those are all of the calls that we are going to take for now. Next up on Washington Journal, we're going to hear from Asia Society Vice President and Managing Director Wendy Cutler to discuss U.S. and Japan relations. And later, Washington Times' Martin DeCaro joins us for our Spotlight on Podcast segment. He'll talk about his podcast, History as It Happens, and the importance of bringing a historical perspective to the political news of the day. But first, this week, the House Education Subcommittee on Higher Education held a hearing on the Education Department's delayed rollout of a new federal student aid application, also known as FAFSA. Here's a clip.
We obviously are dealing with a mess here today. Thanks for coming over here. Do you feel like the department has owned its mistakes or taken responsibility?
All right.
And do you believe any employees at the Department of Education, political or otherwise, should lose their jobs because of the botched rollout?
The department has certainly acknowledged that these have been difficult and challenging times.
All right, folks. Well,
but I have yet to hear any sort of apologies from the Department of Education.
All right. No bingo today, but man, we got close. It was actually a pretty good show. Anyway, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Thanks for watching.